Well, my name's Clint Holly, and my business is called Well Made Music. And what we do is we cut master lacquers for the vinyl reproduction industry. And what that means is we basically create the first record of any record that you see in a store. It's cut on a material called a lacquer, and then it gets turned into metal plates that then they put in big presses. I call it like a waffle iron, and they put a puck of PVC in there, and then they squish it, and that's what becomes your favorite records. I'm a lifelong vinyl music fan. I started collecting records back in the 1980s when CDs came out and everybody was eliminating their record collections, and my parents were big flea market people, and so they used to get me and my sister out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and drag us to flea markets. I started noticing like people selling records, and I had gotten my first record was like a Michael Jackson Off the Wall around 1979 or 1980. And so people were selling literally records. They were selling them for 10 cents and 25 cents at flea markets back in 1985, 1986. And so as a young kind of teenager, the exposure to music, I saw something like the cover to Neil Young's After the Gold Rush album. And it had the gatefold where you could open it up and see his ripped jeans and the patches. I was like, now this is pretty cool. I want to know more about that. And so I would buy stacks of records, 10 cents a piece, and it kind of started it all. And I worked in the live music industry from 2000 to 2010 as a sound engineer, a bar manager. The late nights get a little bit old, and around 2009, a person opened a pressing plant in Cleveland, Ohio. His name's Vince Lazars, and he opened a pressing plant called Gotta Groove Records. And at the club that I worked in, he put a little poster, a little card, and I took it off the wall, and I was like, well, I'm gonna try and do something different, get a different job or whatever. I sent him a resume, and he didn't hire me, but he took me along one day to a studio that owned a machine called a mastering lathe. He took me just because I had an audio background, and he was a manufacturing guy. And the studio we went to had one of these machines, and Vince offered this person the job that I do now, and they turned him down. And so I went home and I talked to my wife Bonnie about the day, and she said, well, you should just buy one of these machines, and not knowing that you can't just drive over to Guitar Center or wherever and buy one. And it started really like a year and a half long odyssey to find out more about the machines, their history, who actually owns ones to sell. And it led me to a man in New Jersey who had stockpiled all of these when all the record companies got rid of them in the 80s and early 90s. And we made a deal. I brought one home one day, set it up in my mother-in-law's garage. She had a little extra room on her garage, and taught myself the craft of cutting records. I always say it's an industry that wasn't really ready for its own success, because people had destroyed a lot of the equipment that was in use, say in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. A lot of it was mothballed in warehouses. A lot of it was in bad condition. These machines were in bad condition. So really, it was an industry built on gear that was sometimes 50 plus years old. So that's one of the challenges we deal with every day, is keeping these machines running, keeping the electronics going, keeping the mechanical aspect of it going. And the demand has just accelerated in 2010. I would say it was pretty manageable what we were doing, and then it has exploded. It's really an industry that's in a lot of transition right now, and the technology is trying to catch up with the older technology. It's a really weird melding of new and old. I've never seen a format come back from the dead before. I don't know if CDs are ever gonna make a comeback, but I did just read an article about people buying DVDs all over again because people want to physically own things. And I think it's that connection people have to the artist when you buy an album and you open the cellophane and you pull the record out and you put it on the turntable. It's a tactile experience, and it makes you feel more connected to the artist. And I think that's what people are really looking for these days. You can see the record on the platter there. And the discs that we use are just a little bit bigger than a record. They're 14 inches instead of 12 inches. And so what that allows them to do is when they make the metal parts out of it, they need to bend over the edges so it can be bolted into the presses. And so they use that extra on the outside to make that extra metal to bend it over. But after you cut a record, we can't listen to it because the material is soft. These are, this material is like nail polish. And so if you play a master, you can potentially take some of the high end off of it because the material is so soft. So you're not supposed to play them when you're done cutting them, so you have to inspect it with a microscope instead of playing it to make sure that everything is okay with it. So that is what Dave's doing right now. Well, we have a website, wellmademusic.net. Is probably the easiest way. We're very active on Instagram. One of the things that we're actually been trying to do over the last couple of years on Instagram is really educate people more about the vinyl process, like what goes into making a vinyl record. I think in this day and age of instant gratification, I think sometimes people think you just plug a thumb drive into a machine and it spits a record out on the other end. And it's a very human endeavor. There's a lot of people touching this record before it winds up in the bin at your favorite record store. And I would say that's a good way. It's Well Made Music Vinyl is our handle on Instagram. We have videos about the vinyl making process, as well as things about how to select your first turntable if you've never been into the hobby of records before. What kind of features to look for on a turntable and stuff like that. So really, education is really the thing that we strive to do more than anything on the Instagram. And it's a good way to get kind of connected to our people. Well, there's a lot of ways to contact us. We'd love to hear from you. We love to answer questions about vinyl, and we're really people, we could talk about vinyl records all day long.